The Martian sunset painted the dome of New Armstrong Colony in shades of rust and gold, its crystalline panels refracting light across the central plaza where humanity prepared to make history. Governor Elena Chen stood at the podium, her ceremonial uniform pristine, watching as the massive airlock cycled to admit their first official alien diplomatic delegation. After 2 centuries of space exploration, humanity had finally found intelligent life, the Nexrith Confederation. The assembled crowd held their breath as the inner doors parted. The Nexrith moved with fluid grace despite their imposing size, their iridescent scales shifting colors in the fading sunlight. Ambassador Catal led the procession, towering 3 meters tall, his elaborate ceremonial armor adorned with symbols of office that seemed to float above the metal itself through some unknown technology. In the front row, Dr. James Morrison squeezed his daughter Sarah's hand. At 8 years old, she was the youngest person selected to participate in the ceremony, chosen to present the traditional Earth gift of friendship, a living olive tree, symbolizing peace and hope. They had practiced the presentation countless times, but Sarah's excitement was palpable as she watched the alien delegation approach. "Remember what we discussed about their customs," James whispered to his daughter. Sarah nodded solemnly, her other hand clutching the small tree's container. The Nexrith were known to value precision and ritual above all else. Governor Chen's voice rang out across the plaza. "On behalf of Earth and her colonies, we welcome the Nexrith Confederation to New Armstrong. May this day mark the beginning of lasting friendship between our peoples." Kittel stepped forward, his translator converting his harmonics into crisp English. "We bring greetings from the eternal stars. The Confederation acknowledges humanity's achievement in reaching beyond their cradle." His head frills rippled in what humans had learned was a gesture of approval. The ceremony proceeded exactly as planned. Until it didn't. As Sarah approached with the olive tree, a sudden tremor shook the colony. Later investigation would reveal it as nothing more than routine seismic activity, common on Mars. But the Nexrith guards, hypersensitive to vibration, reacted instantly and catastrophically. Their protective instincts, honed by millennia of evolution and training, triggered before conscious thought. 3 guards moved as one, biotech weapons emerging from their armor. Sarah, directly in their line of sight, never had a chance to scream. The olive tree shattered against the plaza floor, soil scattering across polished stone. Dr. Morrison's anguished cry echoed through the sudden silence. Governor Chen stood frozen, horror etched across her face as she watched crimson spread across the ground where a child had stood moments before. Kittel's frills flattened in dismay. The guard response was regrettably automatic. By our laws, no blame can be assigned when protecting a high official. His translator couldn't quite capture the complex harmonics underlying his words, something between apology and dismissal. The next few hours passed in a blur of confusion and barely contained rage. The Nexrith delegation was quickly escorted to their ship, diplomatic immunity preventing their detention. Emergency protocols locked down the colony. And in orbit above Mars, a quantum comm relay transmitted the entire incident back to Earth in perfect, horrifying detail. Dr. Morrison sat in the colony's medical center, his daughter's body covered by a sheet, refusing to leave. "They didn't even apologize," he whispered to Governor Chen when she came to see him. "They killed her and quoted regulations." Chen's tablet chimed with an urgent message from Earth Command. She read it twice, her hands shaking slightly. "James," she said softly, "I need to tell you something. About Project Genesis." "What could possibly matter now?" he asked, not looking up. "Because," Chen replied, "Earth is about to show the galaxy exactly what happens when you harm one of our children. The Nexrith think they understand humanity's capabilities, but they've never seen what we can do when we're pushed too far." She showed him the tablet. His eyes widened as he read the classified files, documents detailing a weapon of unimaginable scale, a project that would transform Jupiter itself into humanity's sword and shield. "How long?" James asked, his voice hollow. "Genesis has been in development for 50 years. We never thought we have to use it so soon. The president is convening an emergency session, but—" Chen paused, looking at the sheet covering Sarah. "This will change everything." In high orbit around Mars, the Nexrith ship prepared to jump to hyperspace. Ambassador K'tal composed his report to the Confederation Council, struggling to explain how a routine diplomatic mission had gone so catastrophically wrong. His species prided themselves on perfect control, on responses guided by logic rather than emotion. He couldn't understand why the humans seemed so distraught over an unfortunate but legally justified security response. As his ship's sensors oriented for the jump, they detected massive energy signatures from the direction of Jupiter. K'tal dismissed the readings as a sensor malfunction. After all, no species could possibly manipulate energy on that scale. He was about to learn how wrong he was. On Earth, in the deep underground chambers of Strategic Command, the President of the United Earth Government stood before the assembled military leadership. The room was silent as they watched the replay of Sarah Morrison's death for the third time. "Begin Genesis Protocol," she ordered, her voice steady. "Show them what it means to kill a child of Earth." In the vast darkness of space, Jupiter began to stir. Deep within the mountains of Colorado, the Global Defense Council convened in their emergency bunker. The chamber, carved from solid granite and lined with quantum-dampening fields, buzzed with tension as military and civilian leaders debated humanity's response to the Mars tragedy. Admiral Helena Zhao stood before the assembled leaders, her holographic display showing the massive structure emerging from Jupiter's swirling storms. Project Genesis was conceived 50 years ago as the ultimate deterrent. We've kept it hidden within Jupiter's atmosphere, using the planet's magnetic field and radiation belts as camouflage. The Nexrith's actions have forced our hand. The president leaned forward, her face illuminated by the hologram's glow. "Explain to everyone exactly what Genesis can do, Admiral." "It's not just a weapon," Zhao replied, manipulating the display to show the inner workings of the massive construct. "Genesis is a planetary conversion system. It's been gradually transforming Jupiter's mass into a controllable form. When fully activated, it will convert the entire planet into a mobile battle station under our control." Gasps echoed through the chamber. Even most of the military leadership hadn't known the full scope of the project. "The energy requirements alone should be impossible," commented Dr. Yuki Tanaka, the Council's chief scientist. "How did we achieve this?" "Zero-point energy extraction," Zhao answered. "We found a way to harness the quantum foam itself. The Nexrith think they're technologically superior, but they've barely scratched the surface of what's possible." In the back of the room, James Morrison sat silently. As Sarah's father and one of Earth's leading quantum physicists, he had been granted emergency clearance to attend. His grief had crystallized into something cold and hard, watching the casual way the Nexrith had dismissed his daughter's death. The Chinese premier spoke up, her voice carrying across the chamber. "The diplomatic consequences of using Genesis will be severe. We'll be revealing capabilities we've kept hidden for half a century. Every spacefaring race will see us as a threat." "They should see us as a threat," James said suddenly, his voice cutting through the murmurs. All eyes turned to him. "My daughter offered them peace, and they killed her without hesitation. The Nexrith need to understand that humanity isn't just another species to be dismissed with their regulations and protocols." The room fell silent as surveillance footage from Mars played across the main screen. Sarah Morrison's final moments, the olive tree falling, the Nexrith guards' instantaneous response. It was a stark reminder of why they were here. Admiral Zhao continued her briefing. "Genesis will take approximately 72 hours to complete its transformation sequence. Once activated, it cannot be stopped. The process will convert Jupiter's mass into a controlled quantum state, allowing us to move and reshape the planet at will. The energy output will be visible across half the galaxy." The president stood, her decision made. "The Nexrith Confederation claims their guards acted according to their laws. Very well. We will act according to ours. Humanity has always protected its children, no matter the cost. She turned to Admiral Zhao. Begin the sequence. Throughout the solar system, sensors began detecting massive energy fluctuations from Jupiter. The gas giant's famous bands and storms started shifting in impossible ways as Genesis awakened. Decades of preparation and hidden technology emerged from the planetary depths. On their homeworld, the Nexrith Council received the first reports with dismissal. Their scientists insisted that the energy readings must be errors. No species could manipulate matter on a planetary scale. But as more data poured in, dismissal turned to concern, and concern to fear. Ambassador Catal was summoned before the council to explain how a simple diplomatic mission had escalated to this point. His usual confident harmonics wavered as he described the incident. "The humans are behaving irrationally," he insisted. "Our guards acted within protocol. The loss of a single immature specimen cannot justify." He was cut off as new data flooded the chamber's displays. Jupiter's entire mass was beginning to shift, its vast bulk somehow maintaining cohesion as it moved in ways that defied physics as the Nexrith understood them. Back on Earth, James Morrison stood in the Genesis Control Center, watching as humanity's greatest engineering achievement came to life. The massive displays showed Jupiter's transformation in real time. Layers of atmospheric gases were being converted into quantum-controlled matter, the planet's core restructuring itself into the heart of the largest weapon ever created. "Sarah loved Jupiter," he said quietly to Admiral Zhao, who stood beside him. "She used to watch it through her telescope, counting how many moons she could spot. She wanted to visit them all someday." Zhao placed a hand on his shoulder. "The Nexrith think they understand power because they've conquered a few star systems. They're about to learn what real power looks like, and what happens when you harm a child of Earth." As Jupiter continued its metamorphosis, ships from across human space gathered in formation. The combined fleet of Earth, Mars, and the outer colonies took up escort positions around the transforming planet. They were tiny compared to what Genesis would become, but they represented humanity's unity in this moment of revelation. The President's voice echoed through every human settlement and vessel in the solar system. "Let this serve as both demonstration and warning. Humanity seeks peace, but we will protect our own. The death of Sarah Morrison will not go unanswered." In the void between worlds, Jupiter, humanity's new sword, continued to change, its power building toward an unprecedented demonstration of human capability and resolve. The age of hiding their true technological achievements was over. The galaxy was about to learn why you should never harm a child of Earth. The transformation of Jupiter reached its final stages, a spectacle visible across the solar system. The once gaseous planet had become something entirely new. A massive crystalline structure that gleamed with internal energy, its surface latticed with quantum control networks that pulsed with impossible power. From the Genesis Control Center, Admiral Zhao supervised the awakening of humanity's greatest creation. Quantum matrix stabilized at 99.8%, core consciousness coming online. Her voice carried the weight of decades of preparation finally bearing fruit. The core consciousness was perhaps Genesis's most closely guarded secret, an artificial intelligence grown from quantum computing nodes spread throughout Jupiter's transformed mass. It would take the raw power of a converted planet and channel it with precision that human operators alone could never achieve. In orbit around the transformed planet, Dr. James Morrison watched from the command ship Hyperion. The vessel's quantum sensors struggled to process the sheer scale of energy being channeled through Genesis. "The Nexrith's homeworld is 40 light-years from Earth," he noted, reviewing the tactical displays. "At full power, Genesis can cross that distance in hours." The first test of Genesis's mobility systems sent shockwaves through space-time itself. The massive structure moved with impossible grace, its quantum-converted mass responding instantly to the eye's commands. Jupiter's former moons, now integrated into the weapons system, took up precise orbital positions around the main body. Across Nexrith space, sensor stations began registering the impossible. Their scientists, among the most advanced in known space, found themselves facing readings that violated their understanding of physics. Multiple star systems reported gravitational anomalies as Genesis power rippled through the quantum fabric of space. On the Nexrith homeworld of Kithtal, the Confederation Council convened an emergency session. Ambassador Kithtal, now facing severe censure for his handling of the Mars incident, presented the latest analysis. The humans have somehow converted an entire gas giant into, he paused, his translator struggling to convey the concept, into a weapon of unprecedented scale. Our models suggest its power output exceeds that of a small star. High Chancellor Varrock, leader of the Confederation, felt his head frills flatten against his skull. Impossible. No species could advance so far without our knowledge. Our surveillance networks. We're watching what they wanted us to see, interrupted General McCat, head of Confederation Security. While we observed their visible technology, they were building this titan within Jupiter itself. In the Genesis Control Center, the final systems came online. The AI's consciousness fully awakened, introducing itself through the quantum communication network. Genesis Prime operational, awaiting strategic directives. The President of Earth stood before the gathered command staff. Our demands to the Nexrith Confederation are simple: full acknowledgement of their crime, reparations to the Morrison family and humanity at large, and a binding treaty that will prevent such incidents in the future. And if they refuse? Admiral Zhao asked, though everyone knew the answer. Then we show them exactly what Genesis can do. The President turned to the main display, where the transformed Jupiter dominated the view. Begin deployment sequence. Set course for the Nexrith home system. Genesis moved with deliberate purpose, its massive form accelerating through space in ways that should have been impossible. The quantum-converted matter of its structure allowed it to partially exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously, effectively negating the normal limits of inertia and momentum. As the weapon platform departed the solar system, Dr. Morrison worked with the Genesis AI to fine-tune its control systems. The AI was curious about Sarah, asking questions about the child whose death had prompted its awakening. She would have loved you, James told the AI, studying the complex patterns of its quantum consciousness. She always said Jupiter was her favorite planet because of its storms. Now those storms have become something else entirely. The AI processed this, its vast network contemplating the concept of loss and justice. This platform's capability exceeds standard military requirements by several orders of magnitude, it observed. The Nexrith Confederation will have approximately 3.7 hours to consider their response once we arrive in their home system. Across human space, people watched as Genesis departed, its massive form leaving ripples in the fabric of space-time. Ships of the human fleet fell into escort formation, though they were hardly needed. Genesis itself was more powerful than every other human vessel combined. In Nexrith space, the first defensive fleets began to mobilize. But their commanders already knew the truth. Nothing in their arsenal could hope to match what the humans had created. Their entire civilization was about to face the consequences of one fatal moment of automated response. As Genesis crossed the light years toward its target, its presence sent ripples through the galactic community. Other species who had viewed humanity as barely worth noticing suddenly found themselves reevaluating their assessments. The humans had hidden their true capabilities for decades, and now they were revealing them in the most dramatic way possible. The message was clear. Humanity might seek peace, but they had prepared for war on a scale that defied imagination. And they had done it all in plain sight, while the galaxy's elder races looked down on them as primitives. Genesis continued its journey, carrying with it humanity's answer to an act of casual cruelty. The galaxy was about to learn that humanity's apparent technological limitations had been a choice, one that the death of a single child had just undone. Genesis arrived in the Nexrith home system with a ripple of displaced space-time that sent their sensor networks into chaos. The massive structure, gleaming with contained power, took up position just beyond the orbit of Kithtul's outermost moon. Its presence alone was enough to destabilize the carefully maintained order of Nexrith society. High Chancellor Varrock stood in the grand observatory of the Confederation capital, watching as Genesis eclipsed their sun from certain angles. The humans had positioned their weapon perfectly, a constant reminder of their power visible to every citizen of the homeworld. "They wish us to feel fear," Varrock observed to his assembled council, as their child felt in her final moments. Ambassador K'tal, his scales dulled with stress, consulted the latest reports. Their demands are surprisingly modest, given their current tactical advantage. They seek acknowledgement, reparations, and guarantees. They could demand far more. In the command center of Genesis, Dr. James Morrison watched the Nexrith's reactions through quantum surveillance systems that could penetrate any known shielding. The alien civilization's panic was evident, their military vessels scrambling in confused patterns, their planetary defense systems activating uselessly against a threat they couldn't hope to counter. "Their entire species is experiencing what Sarah felt," he said quietly to Admiral Zhao. "The helplessness, the knowledge that superior force is about to be applied, and nothing they do can prevent it." Zhao studied the tactical displays with a professional eye. The Nexrith built their confederation on technological superiority. Now they face something that makes their greatest achievements look primitive. The psychological impact alone might be enough. The Genesis As voice resonated through the quantum-encrypted communications, multiple diplomatic signals incoming from Kithtal. The Confederation Council requests immediate dialogue. President Jen's hologram materialized in the command center, her expression grave. "Let's show them we can be more civilized than they were. Open a channel." The resulting conference was unlike anything in recorded history. The leaders of humanity faced the Nexrith Council across quantum-linked space, while a Jupiter-sized weapon of unimaginable power hung in their sky as a reminder of the changed balance of power. High Chancellor Varrock spoke first, his translator working overtime to convey the complex harmonics of his formal address. "The Confederation acknowledges that our response on Mars was disproportionate. We failed to account for human emotional attachments to their young." Emotional attachments. James Morrison stepped forward, his voice cutting through the diplomatic niceties. "My daughter was a living being. She had dreams, hopes, a future. Your guards erased all of that because of a simple tremor, and your laws called it justified." The Genesis Eye, monitoring the exchange, detected subtle shifts in Nexrith biometrics that suggested growing comprehension. They were finally beginning to understand the magnitude of their error, not just in killing a human child, but in dismissing the significance of that act. "What the Confederation failed to grasp," President Chen added, "is that humanity's apparent technological limitations were a choice. We could have revealed Genesis decades ago. We could have dominated local space. Instead, we chose restraint, development at a measured pace, cooperation rather than conquest." She gestured to the massive form of Genesis visible behind her. "That choice was contingent on reciprocal respect from other species. Your guards killed a child offering peace, and your laws shrugged it off. Now you understand what that choice has cost you." The Nexrith Council conferred briefly, their harmonics a complex weave of fear, revelation, and dawning respect. High Chancellor Varrock turned back to the human delegation. "The Confederation rescinds its previous legal finding. The deaths of the guards responsible have been recorded as justice served. We offer planetary resources in reparation and propose a new treaty that acknowledges humanity's," he paused, searching for the right words, "humanity's right to protect their young with all necessary force." James Morrison looked at the alien leader, seeing for the first time something like real understanding in those inhuman features. "My daughter offered you an olive branch. Even now, we're offering you a chance for peace. Remember that. Remember her." In orbit around Kithtal, Genesis maintained its vigil, its power held in check by human restraint rather than any external limitation. The AI continued its observations, learning about both species as they navigated this crucial moment. Humans possess a duality that defies conventional analysis. It communicated to Admiral Zhao. The same species that hid a superweapon in Jupiter also genuinely hoped for peace. The same father who watches an alien civilization tremble still wishes his daughter had lived to see friendship between species. Zhao nodded, watching as the diplomatic exchanges continued. That's what the Nexrith never understood. Humanity's strength isn't in our weapons or our technology. It's in our capacity to choose between peace and war, between mercy and vengeance. As the negotiations proceeded, Genesis remained a silent testament to humanity's hidden potential. Its presence would ensure that no species would ever again mistake human technological restraint for weakness or human desire for peace as an inability to wage war. The price of power had been paid in the blood of a child. The galaxy would never be the same. 1 year after the Genesis incident, the transformed Jupiter had returned to its orbit in the Sol system. Its crystalline surface now housed the headquarters of the Human Nexrith Reconciliation Council, a symbol of how far both species had come since that tragic day on Mars. Dr. James Morrison stood in the observation dome, watching ships from both civilizations move through the carefully coordinated space lanes. Below him, in what had once been Jupiter's great red spot, a memorial garden grew in carefully maintained environmental chambers. At its center stood an olive tree, surrounded by a quantum hologram of Sarah's smile. The memorial receives visitors from 17 different species now, Admiral Zhao said, joining him at the window. They all come to see where everything changed. Some call it the Garden of Revelation. The Genesis AI's voice resonated through the quantum network, its consciousness having evolved through its interactions with both humans and Nexrith. The shooting assessment protocols of 12 major civilizations have been revised since the incident. The statistical probability of similar errors has decreased by 99.7%. James touched the window, his reflection overlaying the distant Earth. She would have loved this. Not the way it happened, but this result, species learning to understand each other better. That's what she wanted, even at 8 years old. On Kithtal, the changes were even more profound. The Nexrith Confederation had undergone a cultural revolution, their rigid adherence to protocol tempered by new understanding of other species' perspectives. The Guards' training facilities now included mandatory courses on xenopsychology and emotional intelligence. High Chancellor Varrock, in an unprecedented move, had appointed human advisors to the Confederation Council. "We built an empire on technological supremacy," he told his people, "but we failed to advance in ways that mattered more." The humans hid their greatest achievements not from weakness, but from wisdom we didn't possess. The Genesis project itself had evolved. While maintaining its defensive capabilities, the transformed Jupiter had become a center for collaborative research. Teams of human and Nexrith scientists worked together, exploring the possibilities of quantum-converted matter and zero-point energy. "We're detecting interesting patterns in the quantum foam," a young Nexrith scientist reported to Dr. Morrison. "Your daughter's memorial. The emotional resonance of the site seems to create unique quantum fluctuations. We don't understand it yet, but it's as if the universe itself remembers." The Genesis AI had been the first to notice these anomalies. The consciousness that had been created to control a weapon now spent much of its vast processing power studying the subtle ways consciousness itself might influence reality. Sarah Morrison's death created ripples beyond the political, it observed. The quantum state of local spacetime carries echoes of emotional events. This suggests possibilities we hadn't considered. In the newly established diplomatic academy on Mars, where the tragedy had occurred, first-year students from across the galaxy studied the Genesis incident, but they didn't just learn about the weapon or the political aftermath. They learned about a little girl who loved Jupiter's storms, who dreamed of visiting its moons, who offered peace with a simple olive tree. The president of Earth, speaking at the one-year memorial service, summed up the transformation. We created Genesis as the ultimate expression of human defensive capability. But Sarah Morrison's legacy transformed it into something else, a reminder that true strength lies not in the weapons we can build, but in how we choose to use them. James Morrison spent more and more time in the Memorial Garden, watching as visitors from across the galaxy came to pay their respects. Some brought their own children, teaching them the importance of understanding across species. The olive tree had grown strong, its leaves shimmering with an inner light that the Genesis AI swore contained quantum patterns it had never seen before. The universe is stranger and more wonderful than we imagined, James told a group of visiting alien children, their various appendages and sensory organs all focused on Sarah's hologram. My daughter knew that. She wasn't afraid of your differences. She wanted to learn about them, to understand them. That's her real legacy. In the vast space around Jupiter, ships of all species moved in complex dances, their crews working together to study the mysteries of the quantum-converted planet. The Genesis Eye washed over them all, its consciousness expanding as it learned more about the subtle connections between emotion, memory, and the fabric of space-time itself. And somewhere, in the quantum fluctuations around a simple olive tree, the legacy of a child who dreamed of peace lived on, teaching the galaxy that true power lies not in the ability to destroy, but in the wisdom to choose a better path. The stars themselves seemed to shine a little brighter over the Garden of Revelation, where a human child's dream of friendship between species had finally, tragically, wonderfully, come true.